All right. We are back with another episode of the Real Estate Investing Club. I hope you guys are having a great day. As always, bringing that Friday energy to you. We have a special guest with us today. It is Adiel Gorel. He has been investing since 1987. That is, I'm going to date myself here. That is 1 year after I was born. So he has quite the amount of experience, more so experience than my entire life in real estate, which means that this is going to be a good episode. There's going to be a lot of wisdom gems dropped. So you guys buckle up and let's get into this. Adiel, thanks for hopping on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I told you before we got on here, we always like starting with stories. We like to hear how people got to where they are. You have to have a good story because it's, 1987. That's been a long time. So tell us, how'd you get here or how'd you get into real estate? And then what have you done since then?
Actually, I've been investing since 1984. 1987 is when I actually formalized it. So this is my 41st year of doing this.
Oh,
my background is all, in high tech and Silicon Valley type stuff. I'm an electrical engineer and computer scientist. I did my graduate studies while living, in Palo Alto in Silicon Valley. I taught at the university, and then I got my first job at Hewlett Packard Labs. Okay. If you think about it, back then there was no Google, no Amazon, so Hewlett Packard Lab is where you really wanted to go if you could, and I did. I was lucky. So two things happened when I got that first job. I was a young guy, and Hewlett Packard paid me so much more than Stanford did. So I thought I was getting paid enormously much, just like a young person now that starts working, at Google or something. And then I was the youngest person in my group. There were some people in my research group at HP Labs who were in their 50s and 60s. And I immediately assumed they would be very wealthy, working there for 30 years, getting paid like that. But once I got to know them socially, I realized not at all. They were not wealthy. They just owned their own home and a 401k. So I said, look, I'm going to have to build my own thing so that I'm 50, when I'm 50 or 60, I look much stronger than they do. My family was involved in real estate development. Not that I cared as a child, I just wanted to play, but still I was exposed to the power. So I said, okay, here, I have a great salary, great credit. I'm young, single, my expenses are close to zero, really. And I'm going to start investing in rental homes. So because in the 1980s, everybody was investing only near where you lived, I was doing it too. So I was living in Palo Alto in Silicon Valley, and I was investing in Silicon Valley. I bought homes in Sunnyvale, in San Jose. After a few homes, I realized I couldn't sustain it. I couldn't really scale it because the numbers in Silicon Valley were not working. Just like now, although on a smaller scale back then, the rents were way too low relative to the it didn't work.
Yeah.
So I said, I'm going to break that rule of buying close to home, and I'm going to go to a place that works. I did a little research. Obviously, in the 1980s, I didn't have the web, and Sergey Brin and Larry Page, I believe, were in kindergarten. But because I was still involved in research with Stanford, they had the ARPANET, which is the precursor to internet.
That was military, wasn't it?
So, it was developed by DARPA.
Yeah.
So with a little search, no visual search like now, line items, text. I discovered that if I flew about an hour and a half from San Francisco, I would land in a smaller city that used to be called Las Vegas. In fact, they still call it Las Vegas. And I could see that I could get homes in Vegas that cost about 1/4 of the Silicon Valley price. But surprisingly to me, the rents were just about 1/2 of the Silicon Valley rent. That was infinitely better. I started flying to Vegas every weekend. They were very skeptical. I always looked younger than my age. Back then, I looked like a boy. Nobody was buying out of state. So the Vegas people thought I would just waste their time.
And back then you had to go to a broker. I mean, I'm sure you could get off market deals, but it would
I was looking for, but so what I did was I spent the first couple of months looking for what I knew I was going to need, a local property management firm. Because obviously, if I lived in California and I was buying in Nevada, I would need a manager. So after a couple of months, I found a management company that I liked. I was still very nervous because I never got a chance to really test them in the field yet. Finally, a broker took pity on me and said, okay, I'll find you homes. And I started buying. I was always very aggressive. My first year, I bought 22 homes. Now, before people get impressed with that number, I will tell you that the average home I bought in Vegas back then cost $39,000 for the entire house.
Wow.
Not only
Wow.
that, not only that, but back then, Fannie Mae didn't have a limit on the number of loans a
Oh,
person
yeah.
could
Okay.
have. And they let me buy, even as an investor, with only a 10% down in PMI, private
Oh,
mortgage,
wow.
which is what I did.
And
'Cause
what was the interest rate in the 80s? Wasn't it really high? Oh no, that was the 90s when it was
it
really
was
high.
very high. And
Yeah.
I'll
Okay.
talk about it very shortly. Let me skip that part because I'll get to it. But you're absolutely right, Gabe. It was very high. So I bought 22 homes, 39,000 each, roughly 10% down with PMI. And my Silicon Valley friends made awful fun of me that first year. What are you doing? Nobody's buying out of state. You're crazy. But when they saw me with my 20 plus homes, the logic of the engineers started working. They said, oh, you know what? We understand what you're doing. We want to do it too. I said, you should go do it. It'll change your future. They said, look, you work here too. We have no time to go to the bathroom. Are you kidding? You are already there with your managers and your homes. How about you lead us? I said, okay, I'll lead you. So I led a group of about 20 engineers. And over something like 3.5 years, we bought roughly 250 homes, not as a group. She bought 6 homes for herself. He bought 4 homes for himself. I bought a couple more. And then during that time, I made the very trivial discovery that even the very cautious engineer who bought just 1 home as a test enjoyed the clout. So, the power of 250 homes, because the service providers, the managers, the realtors knew if he wasn't happy, he would complain to me.
Yep.
And every other manager in town was calling me all the time, come to us. We are better, we are cheaper, we are nicer, we are taller. And who doesn't want to manage 250 homes, plus the many dozens we may still buy in the future? I started liking it a lot. It was much more fun than my tech life. Because it was so unusual, I started getting invited to speak about it to investment groups. In one of my lectures, unbeknownst to me, there was a reporter for the San Francisco paper. In the Sunday paper, there was an article about this. And then I was invited to speak on the NBC morning news. I was enjoying it so much, and I felt like I was helping my friends make their future strong. Eventually, I dropped my high-tech life, formalized this, and in the past 40 years, my investors bought more than 10,000 homes in about 30 markets. And because I've been doing it for 40 years, the results are in. The sweet time, this is not a get-rich-quick thing. Usually, the sweet spot is between 12 and 14 years. It has a profound effect on your life. So thousands of people have retired powerfully, sent their kids to the best schools in the country, became wealthy. So now I want to add one layer to this discussion. To the best of my knowledge, there's only one country in the world where they give you what I call the biggest financial gift in the world. And the Americans were born into this gift, so they don't think it's special. That's why I'm not retired, because I need to bring the word out. It's a life changer. The only American that I was in touch with that gets it without me explaining it, like I'm going to do right now, is Warren Buffett, who was in touch with me in 2012, and he gets it. In fact, there's an article in Entrepreneur magazine about my interaction with him and about this. So what's the name of this crazy gift that is given in the United States? You know the name. Everybody knows the name. It's the 30-year fixed rate loan. So typically when I say, people say, what's new? I know about it. Come on.
I didn't know a 30-year fixed rate wasn't a thing outside of the US.
Exactly. And that's why I'm not retired.
Interesting.
So here is what it looks like when I speak, let's say, in Europe. I tell the Europeans, my Americans can get a loan called 30 years fixed. They say, what does it mean? I say, well, like the name implies, it's fixed. The monthly payment, principal and interest will never, ever change with inflation. And the loan balance, how much you owe, which goes down with your little payments every month, also doesn't keep up. The Europeans treat me harshly. They say, with all due respect, you don't know what you're talking about. That's not possible.
How does it? And I'm very ignorant outside of the U.S. in terms of real estate.
Infinitely tied to inflation, not with the lifetime cap, not with the yearly cap. So a European gets a loan of 1 million, let's say,
Yeah.
and their payments are 4,000, and they pay like clockwork. And 12 years later, they owe 1,700,000, and their payment is 8,500. It kept up with inflation. That's how it should be, because the cost of the tomatoes, the avocados, the shoes, the chairs keeps up with inflation. You need more dollars to buy the same goods. The only thing, only in one crazy country that never budges, is your loan. What does that mean? Inflation is your very best friend. It erodes the true value of your loan, and you don't need to wait for 30 years. Typically, between 12 to 14 years, your loan looks like a joke. And then your life has changed. So the Europeans say to me, we're going to prove to you how stupid you are and how you don't know what you're talking about. You have inflation in the US, right? Right. Always, right? Yes. Sometimes low, sometimes high. Yeah? Yeah. So if 40 years ago, they say you bought a postage stamp for 4 cents. Now, 72 cents. 40 years ago, you went to the movies in New York City for $2. Now, $16. If you go to Whole Foods today and you buy a beautiful organic avocado, $3. You know, we know, everybody knows, in 10 years, very likely to be $6, right? How is it possible that in this kind of an environment where inflation makes the dollar weaker all the time, where you need more and more dollars to buy the same, somebody will be insane, stupid, moronic enough to actually lend you money for 30 years? That would be the only thing in the US economy never to budge. Impossible.
Yeah.
If it were possible, like I said, inflation would be your very best friend, make you wealthy. And, it's crazy. It would make your loan smaller and smaller in real dollars all the time. When they do a search on their phones and they see we really have this craziness, the next question is always the same. If the Americans can get this unbelievable gift, why don't they all drop everything they do and run out to get as many of those as they can? My answer is always the same. I don't know. I sure did. That's why I'm not retired. I started this 40 years ago, a little more. I could have retired very powerfully. In fact, even those, the 22 homes in my first year, I would have retired off of those very, very well, which I bought hundreds, by the way. Why am I not retired? Because just like you said, for you who was born here, you think it's normal. It is not. And only Warren Buffett gets it before I explain it. Amazing. So, I have a message, and I'm not retiring, although, of course, I could, because I have a message, and the message is a life-changing message. So this is what it looks like. I get a call from one of my investors. He says, remember me? I started investing in my early 40s, and I bought only one home because I wanted to see that the managers really take care of the home. I worked in high tech, and I didn't have time. Then when I saw that it worked, I understood what you explained, he says, about the 30-year fixed rate loan being a gift. So I put the minimal down payments that I could, and I bought as many as I bought 19 homes. Again, not as impressive as it sounds. When he was buying them, he was buying brand new homes, because we started after a few years buying only brand new homes.
So they don't break down.
So I bought, 19 homes, he says. And last year I turned 55, he says to me. So I looked at my 19 homes, and they all had a loan with 17 years left on it, not even halfway of the 30-year term. But I noticed that even though I put a very small down payment and my loans were very high relative to the price, after 13 years, my loans were just about 1/4 of the value. That's what inflation does to the only thing in the US economy to not budge. Insane, simply insane. So he said, first of all, I was delighted because over 19 homes, I had millions of dollars in equity. That's what happens. He said, but then I took it one step further. I took 4 homes of my 19, sold them. Didn't do anything fancy, no 1031 exchanges, nothing. Sold and paid my tax, used the proceeds to pay off the remaining small 15 loans. And with 15 free and clear homes, I retired from my tech job. Thank you so much. And then the sentence that everybody always says in the future, I should have bought more.
That so is that's what one of the questions that we ask on the show during the quick question round is, if you could give your younger self any piece of advice, what would it be? And pretty much we keep a running tally on here. It's like 90% or something of the guests that come on the show, they either say they wish they kept more or they wish they got started sooner. And I bet it's because of that phenomenon that you're mentioning here. In the United States, the 30-year mortgage stays the same. And so if you buy more, you're just going to have more money in 10 years.
By the way, it's even better than we say here, because not only does it not change with inflation, and inflation makes it smaller, if the rates go down, you can refinance that. It's completely insane. It's too good to be. When I explain it, 40 years later, my mind says it's too good to be true. No, it's too good to be true. So, when I started buying, to your question, inflation was high in the mid-1980s, and my rates on my 22 homes in Vegas were, are you ready? 14%, 1-4.
Damn.
I already told you I put only 10% down. Now, you don't have to be a great mathematician to realize that with 10% down payment and PMI and 14% rate, every one of my 22 homes started out with a negative cash flow.
I was going to say, were you making any money? Was there any cash flow? Or?
Negative. I had to make up the shortage. People have the wrong idea. People think cash flow is only cash flow on day one. No, it's a long-term investment. So I asked myself, can you sustain the negative on 22 homes? I said, yes, I can. I'm getting paid in my job well, and I can. And then I had a very clear idea. Luckily, I had this clear idea. I said, even at 14%, this is a fixed rate loan. The principal and interest will never change, but the rents keep up with inflation. And inflation was high, obviously. So today it's negative. Tomorrow, maybe 2 or 3 years, it'll be break even, then positive, then more and more. Exactly what happened, except something else. A couple of years later, the rates went down to 12. 12! I refinanced everything to 12. Everything became positive. And then a couple of years later, you're not going to believe it. The media was screaming, single-digit interest rate. We all ran out and refinanced to 9.95, and everything became really positive. Just those 22 homes in my first year would have done everything for me. Of course, I kept on buying. I have investors who bought 100 homes. I have investors who bought 60. I have many who bought 1, and it already makes a difference in their lives. Yeah. But it doesn't matter. The interest rate, it's very, I don't need to do
time is what's making you the money. It's not
time and inflation. Yep. Time and inflation when you have a fixed rate loan. Yeah. So I don't need to go to any stand-up comedy anymore, because it's funny enough when the media says the rates are 6.75. Oh my God, you can? Yeah, really? Really?
When I got into the stage of buying things, when I first bought my first home, interest rates, I think they were like 4% and then they went down to 3. And as they started to climb over 5, I was like, oh my God, they're so high. And my dad, I remember he told me, he's like, when I bought my home, the interest rate, I want to say he said something like, I can't remember. I don't want to misquote him, but it was really high. And now it just kind of put it in perspective. I was like, oh, interesting. Interest rates have not always been.
For the first 20 years of my investment life, if you called me and said, I'm a crazy lender and I'm going to give you loans at 7.5, I would be dancing in the streets. Now, when people look at the universe as only the last 3 or 4 years, I understand rates went to the lowest point in the history of all time because of COVID, and the Fed lowered rates essentially to zero. And a homeowner could get a loan at 2.5%, an investor 3.25%. So of course, 6.75 looks really high. Doesn't matter at all. First of all, it's not high historically. Second, who cares? So the media, which is comprised primarily of people who didn't buy a lot of real estate, they just write. They say, don't do anything, wait for the rates to go down. Really? When the rates go down, the media is going to start to pump everybody to buy. Millions are going to want to buy. Demand's going to be high.
Prices are going to go up.
Supply is going to be lower. Prices are going to shoot up. And many of the builders who build the brand new homes that we like to buy are not even going to want to work with investors, as happened during the 3% rates.
Yeah.
We had a hard time even buying. Today, they're so friendly. They love investors.
Just buy my house.
In fact, ironically, they will give you gifts such as buying down the rate to maybe 5 or 5, So the thing to do for the smart investor is to buy at a time like this. And then in the future, if rates go down, you refinance. So
I am curious. Why? Oh, wait, I already know the answer. I was going to ask why. So I buy a commercial property. I buy mobile home parks, RV parks, self-storage facilities. I have bought single family in the past, but it's not what I do. I was going to ask, why don't you buy commercial?
Well,
and the reason is because of the mortgage that you get.
The crazy gift given in the US called the 30-year fixed rate loan in the face of constant inflation is available only on 1 through 4 residential units. And many duplexes and fourplexes are not built in the best locations. So it's a single family home. Over my career, I bought many, commercial properties, apartment buildings, even land subdivision. But I always go back to the tried and true single family homes with a low down payment and a 30-year. In fact, I was invited to do a TED talk, a TEDx talk a couple of years ago. And I say, here are the steps. You buy a brand new home in the Sunbelt states. We don't have the scope for me to go into that.
Yeah.
In a large metropolitan area in the suburbs, you put a small down payment, you get a 30-year fixed rate loan. You let the local manager lease the home up for you, and then you proceed to do the hardest action for a human being to do.
Wait.
Nothing. Nothing.
Yep.
Nothing at all. And in 12 to 14 years, your life is not the same.
Yep.
Very simple.
Yeah. It makes a lot of sense, and it is it's something when you're born in that environment, when you grow up in the US, you don't realize that is special. You feel like that's just what it is, and you don't realize that it is a gift, and throughout the world that is not a thing that exists.
That's why I'm not retired.
Yeah.
Because the message is that, by the way, just for the sake of interest, Warren Buffett is 94. He's worth about 150 billion. He's not retired.
Yeah.
But I'm not retired because I have a message to share. And I had to find balance in my life. I make music in my home studio, which is down there inside. You can find it everywhere on all platforms. I even have a health and wellness podcast, but I dedicate more than half my time to meeting with people because I feel I can change their lives. And I will meet with your listeners. I love the one-on-ones because I literally feel, and again, like I said, the results are in.
Yeah.
In 40 years, I've seen thousands change their life.
Awesome. Well, hey, I appreciate the message, and I'm sure everyone listening does as well. I'm going to take that opportunity though to push us into the quick question round because we have run down the clock. And it starts with education. Education is the bedrock of anybody's investment journey. And so I always like to ask 2 recommendations. It could be any form of education. It could be a conference you've gone to, mentorship program you've been a part of, a book you've read, movie you've seen, anything. But I need 2 recommendations, one for general life wisdom and then one for real estate.
Quick comment, don't use education as an excuse never to do anything. I've met thousands
100%.
of people who says, I need to take more courses, I need to take more boot camps. No, it's very simple. There's not much to do. I'm sorry to say, I recommend that you read my book on Amazon called Remote Control, Retirement Riches. Watch my TEDx talk, just put my name, my full name, into YouTube. You watch my tape. It's only 11 and a half minutes. And then we have, for the 40 years, every quarter, we have an event. I invite the market teams. They show us their PowerPoints. I explain. They bring properties. I bring lawyers and CPAs. I take hundreds of questions. Used to be a live event. Now, since COVID, it's by Zoom. Our next event is on March the 1st, 2025. Everyone is welcome. You can register for free at icgre.com under the tab events.
Cool. I will make sure and put that in the show notes. So if you guys want to be part of that, just go ahead and click the little more in the description. It'll pull down the full description, and in there you can find that link. All right, I'm going to move us on to the next question. This is about the US. As you mentioned, it's a big place. There is a lot of opportunity out there, which means there's a lot of different metros to choose from. So what is the metro you are most excited about investing in today?
I'll try to do it as quick as I can. I've been a student of the demographics in the US for decades. To me, the demographic growth goes to the South, to the Sunbelt states. So I invest only in the Sunbelt states. So states like Nevada, Arizona, Texas, Oklahoma, Louisiana, Alabama, Georgia, Florida. Don't invest in the Midwest, not in the North. I like large metropolitan areas for job diversity. I like the suburbs, families with kids, they go to school, it's very stable. I like brand new homes. There are many articles I wrote for investment magazines I'd love to share with your investors, with your listeners if they want. One of them is why buy brand new homes. I'm not going to go into it now. So it's those cities. However, many of the cities that fit the criteria where we bought so many thousands of homes don't work now. Like Vegas and Phoenix and Austin, they don't work. They are too expensive now. So what does work? So as we
Anything
speak,
in Mississippi.
as we speak, there's Oklahoma City, Tulsa, Oklahoma. Dallas, Texas is coming back now because the price, even though they have very high property tax, the Orlando market is too expensive, but north, south, and east of it, you can still find some good stuff in Central Florida. The most expensive market we are still in is Raleigh-Durham, the Research Triangle in North Carolina. And in all of those places, of course, we have property management firms managing thousands of homes, really caring about every investor, even the one who comes in with one home.
Nice. You're not the first to mention OKC is their favorite place to invest, and that's it's interesting. I haven't bought anything out there. I've looked at a few self-storage deals down that way, but it's crazy how high insurance is in that area because of it's like Tornado Alley. And
actually, there are three natural disasters that pretty much every place in the US is exposed to: the tornado, the hurricane, and the earthquake. Out of those three, the best, if you can call it so, is the tornado, actually, because it's very narrow. It comes and usually hits one street, and that's it. And the insurance is perfect for it. For example, between Dallas and Oklahoma City, we bought about 3,500 homes over the past 25 years. To date, not a single home has ever been hit by a tornado. So that's the best one.
Pretty good.
The second one is the hurricane. It can hit many thousands of homes, not a direct hit necessarily, but but still insurance does pay. The worst one by far, the earthquake, because the insurance is very poor. So if you need to be exposed to something, the tornado is actually the best.
Quote unquote, the best. Yeah. Huh. I did not know that. Makes sense. Actually, it doesn't make sense. I would like to know why that is, but we don't have the time right now. I'm going to move us on to the next question. This is about finding the deal. It all starts with getting in contact with the seller and penning that purchase agreement. So what is your favorite way to generate leads and find new deals?
I believe in simplifying. I work with a lot of people in high tech, but I also work with teachers and truck drivers and doctors. I work, with everyone. The homes we buy brand new start at about $200,000 for a brand new home in a good area and end at maybe 300 and change. So, it's affordable to most people. I try to simplify. And by way of simplifying, I like to buy brand new homes from builders. So because we have the infrastructure in all of those markets, local property managers who really care about us and all of our investors, and local brokers who sold us thousands of homes, the brokers live there. They know the builders. They negotiate with the builders. The builders can give you gifts that a regular seller cannot. They can buy down your loan a lot. They can give you, the appliance package free. So we like to buy brand new homes from builders, and the builders are chosen and negotiated with via our trusted local broker team.
All right, brokers. That is a very tried and true, solid way to find leads and to find deals. Um, all right, that leads us to the next question. This is about lessons learned. You've, I think you mentioned like 1,500 or so something deals that you've been a part of. So I'm sure in those 1,500s, there has been some times when things go wrong. In
More than
fact,
10,000 deals.
yeah,
And I
yeah, pretty.
myself, as an individual, like, a few hundred homes, yes.
And the question is, in those lessons, in those times when deals go wrong, there's always a lesson to be pulled from it. So, what was a deal that went sideways for you, and then what was the lesson you got from it?
One of the lessons after a few years, we learned to buy only brand new homes. That will take care of a lot of stuff. Buying in good areas, that will take care of a lot of stuff. And finally, I've been in the 40 plus years through 3 cycles of up and
Mm,
down, including the worst one.
mm.
And a lesson for everyone who says, what do you do when there's a recession? Once again, you do the hardest action for a human being to
Hold
do.
on to your seat.
Nothing at all. Because very, very, unintuitively, during a recession, the rents are very stable and good. Why? Because the people who live in your home as tenants and they were dreaming of buying their own home and leaving you, now they say, oh, there's a recession. We are not buying a home. Let's stay. Multiplied by millions. And during a recession, rents are very stable because they have a place, they have to live there. So all you need to do is do nothing. The panic that took place in 2008, 9, 10, 11, when people say, oh my God, the value of my home dropped below my loan, it's underwater, I'm giving it to the bank, here are the keys. Mistake. The rents are stable, sit and do nothing. Today, those homes are, whew, the loans are a tiny fraction of the, and they've made people quite wealthy. So just don't panic, do nothing. Doing
hardest
nothing is a
hardest
very
thing to
powerful strategy.
do. Yeah, it's very very difficult to not do anything when you feel like you need to. If there's something going wrong and the right action is no action, that is the hardest action to take for sure. All right, that leads us to the last question. You've actually already given us to us, but I'm going to ask one more time. You've given us a lot to think about. I'm sure people want to reach out, get in contact with you. As a two-parter, where can they find you, and then what can they expect when they reach out?
Okay, so you can get in touch with us. Send us an email at info@icgre.com. And my staff will call you up and set up a one-on-one call with me to talk specifically. I will guide you. I have a meeting with a lady next week who bought 28 years ago. She has a question about the fence. I'll be there for her. I love guiding and being there for my investor, me and my staff. Join our event, our quarterly, event. As I said, next one is on March the 1st. Just register for free, icgre.com under events. And then what you can expect, I'll guide you through it, we'll walk you through it. I recommend that people start with buying one home. Break the ice of buying out of state, all the fear that sometimes people call me up and say, I just sold the company, I want to buy 100 homes. I said, how about you buy one? Buy one home, let it get leased and boring. Buying home number 2 is just a repetition of the same process. Buying home number 4 is already downright boring.
Yep. Awesome. I will put that link in the show notes, info@icgre.com, or you can just go to icgre.com. Pretty easy to remember, but if you do need help, go ahead and click that little more in the description. It'll pull down that full description, and in there you can find Adiel's links.
And I'll be happy to share the magazine article, the TEDx talk, the PBS TV special that I did. I can share it, with everyone. Just send us an email, info@icgre.com.
All right. Sounds good. Well, that wraps it up. Adiel, thank you very much for hopping on the show.
Gabe, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. For everybody who's with us today, thank you guys for showing up. You are the reason we do this. So if you guys have any questions, reach out to me, Gabe at therealestateinvestingclub.com. If you guys want to support the show, just leave us a review. Other than that, I hope you guys have a great week. Keep rocking real estate, and I look forward to seeing you on the next episode.